Hello, how are you? Thanks for clicking on. Today we're going to talk a little bit about overactive thinking, or as I like to call it, rat brain. So, Overactive thinking is something that a lot of people have, and that is really stimulated and supported by the culture. And um, there's a couple of different ways that that happens. One is um, we're kind of trained that you're always problem solving is like the way to go. And if problem solving is the way to go, then you have to keep thinking in terms of what's wrong. And there, questions are an amazing thing because questions are like the generator and the tiller. They're like the engine and the tiller. And so when you're asking a question, you're it's like changing the channel on the cosmic TV, and you're asking the universe to show you the very thing that you're asking for. So if you're if you're a good problem solver, and if you've gotten a lot of good results or cookies from problem solving, then you're really good at looking for what's wrong. This is often mistaken for critical thinking. Critical thinking is a whole other thing. And this is just criticizing or looking for what's wrong. And because they get interchanged and it's kind of thought of that they're the same things, it's very much socially promoted. So if you're a good problem solver, and if you're in conversation with anybody, you're already thinking a lot about what's wrong. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? A couple of things happen when you keep asking what's wrong. For one thing, the universe keeps bringing you what's wrong. It keeps showing you what's wrong, and you'll never run out of what's wrong. But also, your energy goes down because everywhere you look, there's something wrong. And that's tiring, it's depleting. Even if you're a really great problem solver, if all you can see are problems to solve, your body's going to immediately get tired. Because that's not the way we're built, and it's not the way life is. It's the way the social construct of life has become, but it's not how life is. There's a movie called Tomorrowland. Tomorrow, yeah, and it's George Clooney is in it. It's not that old. It's probably 2019. And in the movie, it's a great movie, and he and this young girl are the only people who think in terms of uh, what can we create. And her father is an engineer, so he works for NASA. So he's used to she's grown up in an environment of creating outside of the box. Um, and her father's been in the world longer, so he's kind of more worn down. But she's like, okay, so what can we do to fix it? And what can we create instead? So it's an entertaining movie, and it's well done, and it has some really great ideas in it. And one of them is this notion of what can we create? So in problem solving, you're still thinking in terms of How can we fix something? And a lot of the movie is about how can we fix something, but it's connected to, and what greater can we create? What can we create that we haven't even imagined yet? And in um, the regular world that has been the driving force, it's been a question of problem solving and fixing you, fixing me, fixing this, fixing that, fixing the road, fixing the economy, fixing politics, fixing your family. It's always about fixing something. But all of that's created structure. So, what do I mean by that? If you were to go out and be in the woods, say, go on a camping trip for like 2 or 3 days, on that second or third day, say you're going to be there for a week, on that second or third day, you're going to have a very different perspective of everything than you did on the first day. Because on the first day, you're still bringing all of the regular world thinking and concerns and points of view and screens. It's like you see through a screen, like a color filter. So on the first day, you're still seeing through the filter of your regular life, your work, your relationships, the person you talk to at Starbucks or whatever. And then by the third day, you've just been out in the woods with the trees and the animals and the sounds and the sights and the, cooking over the wood fire, or, those kinds of concerns, the concerns that you have, the things that you're thinking about, the things that you're paying attention to when you're in the woods on a camping trip are very different than the things that you're paying attention to on your daily commute and on your lunch hour and that kind of thing. So the things that you're thinking about on the third day are going to be uh, less of that structure of the commute and the work and the family and the social media, and more about um, what's physically real in the moment, the woods and those sounds of the creek and the temperature and whether or not you're thirsty. So on that camping trip, your thinking becomes more organic, let's say, and you're going to make different choices and different decisions because your body is more relaxed. You haven't been doing the rat brain, because the rat brain, the overthinking, needs to be stimulated and it needs to be fed, right? And if you're in an environment where none of those concerns are relevant, they have no place there, then they will die away. They will fall away. So when you take that energy, that the way you are on the third day of a camping trip, when you take that into your everyday, you'll notice that there's a big difference in how things operate. You're When you're connected in your everyday life, you generally tend to be go, 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 do, 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 go, 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 do, 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 and not so much. Um, we'll put it this way: when we're in the go, go life, paying attention to things like, am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Are my feet cold? Um, are the kids hungry or thirsty? Paying the kind of physical attention to the world has kind of a rap of being a distraction, which is pretty ironic. because if you don't have a physical body, you don't have a go-go life. And if you don't have physical health and energy, you don't have a go-go life. So, uh, part of the rat brain comes from keeping up with this oscillation, the velocity of social media, um, carpools, traffic, schedules. I mean, even here in the COVID period, we've kind of moved that freneticness into um, the COVID life, or else there's kind of like a sprawl. You know, I think everybody's done it by now because it's like a year into it. But you know, um, going to work on the Zoom call with your jammies on, or the jammy bottoms on, and your suit top on the top. So there's ways that we continue to keep the go 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 do do, because social media and other media and just the kind of the structured world that we live in has told us that it's the go 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 do 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 that's the most important thing. How many things are you doing in a day, and that kind of stuff. And so if you're not go 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 do do do, then you can have a kind of a programming that says that you're not doing enough. So that fear of missing out and not doing enough is still with us even in the COVID period, and kind of getting on your case for stuff is still with us, right? And if you're asking the universe for what's wrong with something so you can fix it, you're on a never-ending loop, because you'll always be able to see, because you see what you want to see. So if you're looking for problems to solve, you will find them. So here's the interesting thing, though. If you're looking for what's right about things, you will find that. So, um, when you're in your job, when you're relating to your family, when you're relating to yourself, if you're asking constantly, what's right about this? What's right about me in this situation? What's right about this situation? The universe will show you that as well. So then you can be on a never ending loop of what's right about stuff. So there's kind of a fallacy. There's a lie that says that if you're only paying attention to what's right about things, you're not really paying attention. And that's not true. And also, it comes from an energy of um, what's real for you. And some people, for what's real, is the world is a serious place, and you've got to be serious, and there are serious problems, and you've got to be serious to solve those serious problems. And it's kind of like this grind of seriousness, and the problems are what's real. There was a character in a TV show, and at her wedding, she was saying how she'd never really trusted the good. Like, she didn't really like vacations, because she knew the good times were going to end and she's going to have to go back to school. And kind of flying in the face of all of that reason, she didn't like Christmas, because she knew it was going to, as a kid, because she knew it was going to end and be over. And so this is a great example of somebody who has decided that the real of life is the hardness or the loss or the separation of goodness. And that's the base. And then periodically you leave that and have some good, right? There's a great W.B. Yeats uh, poem quote about that. I think it was the Irish proverb of he was Irish enough to, he had enough. Um, I'm paraphrasing, I'll get it wrong, but something like he had enough sadness in him to withstand periodic bouts of joy. And some people, that's their hard their at rest place. A lot of people don't know that that's their at rest place, and then they wonder why the good doesn't last. But here's the reverse of that, which is the at rest place is that things are wonderful and then there's periodic upsets. They're both true because life is flowing, it's always changing, and it goes. There's easy and there's challenging and there's flow and it's alive. It's life is alive, so it's always moving. But in the constructed world, we've kind of gotten used to the idea that something ought to be a certain way all the time. But, that's a photograph. If things don't change in a photograph, in life, things change all the time. And so, one of the kind of defenses that has developed in the culture is to think. Like you can think your way through anything. Like you can think of all the things that might happen. Like you can think of all the problems that might happen and solve them before they happen. These are these are pretty crazy ideas. Now, if you are an engineer and you are at NASA, then you do want to think of all the different things. But see, that's about things. NASA engineers are working with matter. They're working with metal and screws and bolts and um, computer algorithms. They're all things that engineers work with. Life is not a thing, and you can't predict all the things that can happen in life, all the opportunities, all the miraculous showings up and goings, and there's just life is not a bunch of things, and so it's you end up kind of being crazy. It's crazy making to think that you can think of everything that's going to happen. You'll get supported by talking. Other people will talk to you about, well, what if this happens and what if that happens. There's a lot of social support, but pre-thinking everything does not do anything except um, get your body agitated. And by that, I mean kicks in the adrenals, kicks in the cortisol levels. It makes a lot of physiological and chemical biochemical changes in your body when you're looking for problems to solve or you're thinking of things that could go wrong. You will get some social support for that. There's a lot of people that, that's the norm for how we communicate is what are we against? And what problems do we need to solve? And there's kind of often a projection that says that if you're not thinking about those things, then you're deluding yourself, or you're Pollyanna, or you're unrealistic, or you're not worthy because you're not serious. And if it always has seemed very funny to me about the Pollyanna thing because all Pollyanna ever did was try to make something good out of something bad. And to say that that's to demean that as an unworthy approach to life is usually coming from people who have that um, at rest space of life is a tragedy with periodic points of joy, like the W.B. Yeats quote. Um, and there's can be a lot of justification, a lot of reinforcement for that idea. Uh, and just as true is that life is an adventure, and there's periodically difficulties. So these are some of the conditions that make rat brain a viable choice and a socially acceptable mode of operation. And that velocity, that speed of things, is worth paying attention to. Because if you're, I knew somebody years and years ago. I dated somebody who worked in a newsroom, TV newsroom, and when it was showtime, I would just be, back in the corner just watching because the pace was really high, the stress was really high, the timing had to be perfect, and all of that went into an actual thing, which is a TV show. And so when this is an example of in the moment, there's moments of intense activity, and the timing is very precise, right? And you want to get your timing right, and everybody else wants to get their timing right. And you really need everybody on the team to have their timing right. But that's nobody lives in the newsroom 24/7. And everybody, even people in the newsroom, have a shift, an 8-hour shift, and they're not doing live news 24/7. And if you were doing live news 24/7, then it would have a different pace because it's a different situation. So if you are in a situation where you have this very high, life and death kind of critical timing and situation, then, and I mean physically, not metaphorically, then that's the speed that you need to have as your norm. And so you can't really conceive of like having that third day out in the woods vacation. And if you had that third day in the woods energy, speed, velocity in the newsroom, it would be a conflict, right? Because it's very different. Now, the longer you're in the newsroom, you would be able to have more of that uh, different energy because there would be a time when you've done it enough that you have like body memory, and you can go into the speed faster. You're not as worried about whether or not you're going to be able to get up to speed, and you have seniority over the whole process. And once you have seniority over the whole process, then you can actually have more of that third day in the woods energy with the process, even though the other people on the team have less time at the process and they're more panicked, right? So with practice, repetition, you get seniority over something, and then you can have more of that third day of the camping trip in your high pressure job. Um, However, if you never um, if you never really show up for yourself when you're at the high pressure job, if you're not paying attention, not from survival, but from interest, then you may not actually learn. And if you have any degree of like imposter feeling, like you shouldn't be there. Mimicry. There is a place where you mimic something enough that then you own it and you understand how it works and you can do it on your own. Um, but if you're in mimicry, uh, and you're never owning what you're learning, if you're not learning something, then it will always be that fearful kind of energy because you're not learning. So all of these things are going to contribute to the rat brain. And my best example of this is years ago, after my parents had died separately, um, and I was at a Christmas with some cousins who didn't have um, my energy or my family's experience of Christmas. And so this group of people had a very um, laid back, very relaxed Christmas, blue jeans and um, consensus about what when they were going to eat. And it was all very agreeable and there was no pressure. And I just thought it was the weirdest thing in the world. It's like, this isn't Christmas. And I thought about it. I did a little meditation about it and just kind of opened up to, okay, what's so different about this? And it was that it wasn't stressful. To me, Christmas was very, very stressful. The timing of things and people's moods and all kinds of weird requirements and changing rules and getting in trouble or wanting to avoid getting in trouble. And so for me to have a Christmas with the same food, it's same menus, a lot of people, and you're eating turkey, but it didn't seem like Christmas at all because I wasn't stressed out. So we can replace stress. We can think that stress is activity or it's productivity or it's the thing that's going to make the difference. And really, it's optional. So there's a lot of pieces to overthinking. And the more you can be curious about the energy and what's going on for you when you're overthinking things. And who appreciates it that you're looking for what's wrong all the time? Was it your mom? Was it a teacher? who are you who are you wanting to do right by always looking for what's wrong with things? And just see if you could notice that and make a different choice. Okay, so what's right about this? So, what's right about this situation that when I can perceive it changes everything dynamically? And just keep asking the question of what's right about this and see what happens with your answers. So, you may notice a change in the kind of answers that you get with what's right about this. Once I realized that uh, it was stress that made Christmas for me, I could make a different choice. And I started to have different meaning associated with the things that I liked about Christmas. And I was able to drain the stress out of Christmas and have joy instead. But, I'm Irish, so I came from that. He had enough tragedy in his life to withstand very bouts of joy. But I did choose, once I realized that back then, I started to choose, okay, so what would it take for me to have more ease with Christmas? And what would it take for me to have more ease with life? And so I was able to migrate my at rest place from a tragedy with bouts of joy to joy with different kinds of opportunities that come up along the way. Some that were, hard, deaths and that kind of thing. But it's just such a very different, it's just such a different world and just such a different life when your at rest place is tragedy with periodic bouts of joy or joy with periodic bouts of challenges. So that's today's installment about overthinking and rat brain and um, what's right about this and what's right about you. That when you can perceive it, it changes everything dynamically. All right, so thanks for being here, and I will see you next time.